All right. Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order this October 27th, 2022 meeting of the Temecula Public Traffic Safety Commission. We will begin with the flag salute led by Commissioner Ackerman.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Here.
Commissioner Carter is absent. Maddox?
Here.
Richardson?
Here.
And Sullivan?
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Am I correct to assume there's no public comment?
That's correct.
Okay. We'll move on to consent calendar, where we have one item to approve action minutes of September 22nd, 2022.
I'll make the motion.
Motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Ackerman, second from Maddox, and roll call vote.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Aye.
Carter is absent. Maddox?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
And Sullivan?
Abstain, I missed that meeting.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, so we'll move on now to business, and item 2 is receive a presentation on draft local hazard mitigation plan update. Good evening.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. Nobody else here but me, but my name is Mike Alford, and I'm the city's emergency manager. And tonight I'm here to provide a brief update on our process for updating the 2017 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan for submission in February of 23 to Riverside County and then to FEMA and the state. As a quick overview, we're going to discuss what the project scope is, of what we're doing and why we're doing it. We'll elaborate on some key terms such as mitigation and what the local hazard mitigation plan itself actually means. We're going to discuss the LHMP and the update process, which include the hazards that are being addressed and how the LHMP plan itself is going to be updated, and then what to expect, so how you can keep yourself updated on the plan's progress as we continue through between now and February. So I'm going to cover our background, what the definition of mitigation is, the overview of the LHMP itself, our city's overview, the public outreach effort that we've conducted to date, and then our next steps as we transition through the progress of the plan. So for the background, FEMA actually provides funding after disasters in order for us to mitigate hazards and other future impacts, whether it be from an earthquake, flood, fires. In order for us to qualify for funding, we have to have a FEMA-approved plan. Historically, it's been difficult to identify the different types of projects that go into it because there's a significant amount of pressure that goes into obligating funds. So prior to actually filing for a grant to get hazard mitigation funds, what we do is identify projects ahead of time and try and get them all the way as far as we possibly can before we then submit that project for funding. Because what that does is if we get the funding ahead of time and we don't have the project ready to go, then that actually shortens the amount of time that we have in order to deliver the project to completion. In 2000, because of that pressure to obligate funds, FEMA actually revised the regulations and require that an LHMP must be in place in order for you to receive those funds. What they're trying to do is ensure that cities do not have consistent damage from disasters over and over, where we fail to put measures in place to lessen that impact if it does happen again. Our LHMP has to be comprehensive, and it has to identify projects within that plan, and those are projects that are feasible for us to complete and are based on our hazard assessment of the city. And that project must be in the LHMP in order for that project to receive funding, or the only other way to get a project approved is immediately following a disaster. For mitigation, mitigation is actually the 5th stop in the cycle of emergency management. It all starts with the disaster itself, and once the disaster is over, we automatically transition into response. After response, you go into recovery. Once your recovery is over and things have gotten back to normal, mitigation is where we really start to fix the impacts that have occurred. FEMA defines mitigation as the effort to reduce and/or eliminate the loss of life and property by lessening those impacts from disasters. Benefits of mitigation activities all include saving lives. It reduces the damage to property. It reduces economic loss by our ability to be able to recover faster. It minimizes the social disruption to the community, and then it really gives us a shorter recovery period as a community so that we can recover faster, and that's done through building in resilience. A perfect example of a mitigation project that has been successful to date is the Temecula Creek project behind Old Town. That has substantially been, or historically been, an issue where we've had significant flooding, including the loss of life back in 1993. And by doing that and creating that channel, we have used mitigation funding provided by the Army Corps of Engineers in order to craft a project that eliminates that hazard here in Old Town. For local hazard mitigation plans, the ultimate goal is to be able to develop a strategy that reduces or eliminates the impact from hazards. We have many hazards here, but we have to be very careful in which ones we choose to provide funding towards and build projects on. Our objectives are simple. We want to apply a comprehensive planning approach to this, which involves the whole community. It's not just a group of people from our staff that participate. We invite the entire community in to participate. We have membership from the CHP, from our Sheriff's Department. We have local visitors. We have our Chamber of Commerce and the hospitals. There's a myriad of different people that are involved in this process and in helping us write and develop this plan. It addresses multiple hazards. We have to look at those hazards that the state identifies as a priority, and since we are resident within Riverside County, we have to look at a minimum the 20 hazards that they have identified that impact the county. And then what we do is we turn around and we look at that information and figure out which ones impact Temecula the most. Then we rank them and prioritize them, and those are the ones that we look at getting funding towards, and we look at our top 5 hazards. It gives us the ability to engage the public as well, because the public has their interest in what we do with the plan, how we affect change that impacts their lives. So as part of the process, we have developed a survey that's posted on our city's local hazard mitigation planning site, which is resident on my emergency management webpage. And it's about a 15-minute survey where they go through and ask specific questions on where you live, what do you believe your top hazards are, what do you feel the city should be doing towards that, and what should we be doing with the funding. And then it goes on to further elaborate on how prepared our city community is. So far, we started this about 3 weeks ago, and the survey has already garnered 156 responses as of last Monday. I'll be actually checking it again tomorrow because we have a hazard mitigation planning team meeting on Wednesday. We also have to learn how to understand our capabilities and our vulnerabilities to hazards as a city. So what we've gone through and done is identified our key assets. Key assets are not only those that are actually owned by the city, but stakeholder assets across the community that actually bring us all together. Because without some of those community assets, then we as a city cannot function, and we can no longer affect change within the community as well. One big item to consider is houses of worship. Especially during disasters or after major traumatic events, people like to exercise their faith. And if we don't have that listed as a key asset that we look at mitigating damage around, whether they're in a floodplain or sitting on top of an earthquake fault, then we're not doing what we should be doing in order to protect the assets of the community as well, because it's not just the city's assets. And when we do this, we make sure that we identify these projects. We don't have to put them all into the plan, but the more that we identify, as the plan continues to grow and evolve, and as we complete projects, we can add additional projects to the plan that keep us going and actually show our desire to improve the resiliency of our community. The requirements for the plan are that as a local community, we must have prepared, adopted, and maintain a plan that gets recycled every 5 years. During the process at year number 3, that's when we start the review process where we go through and we review the plan, we re-identify our hazards and all vulnerabilities, and we rank those. And then it gives us enough time to have an adequate 18-month planning cycle so that we can submit that up through the county and eventually to the state and FEMA for adoption. What they're looking for are 6 really key different areas. They want to know that we have documented the case properly and that we have documented our planning process and how we've evolved through that process. They want to know what our community currently looks like, what our hazards are, and any prior impact or information we have on those hazards as they've occurred across the city. They want us to validate and identify projects and actions that go along with those, as well as our method for planning review and how we plan to go about updating and implementing that plan once it comes back approved from FEMA. Once that comes back, we then submit it to the council for adoption. Once it's adopted, then we have to send that resolution up to FEMA, and that closes the loop on the plan, and we are then good for the next 5 years. Our current plan was last approved in 2017, and it can be found on the city's website by going to the Office of Emergency Management and under the Local Emergency Plans tab, or you can use the search bar and type in LHMP update, and it will take you directly to that website, which houses all of the information on our current planning process and what actions we're taking, as well as the plan that we are currently validating and updating. The prior plan, as you can see in the presentation, has analyzed a number of different hazards, and our top hazards, the top 5 that were identified for Temecula were transportation hazards, wildfire, floods, and technical hazards. And our mitigation actions that were reported, the projects all focused on those priority hazards, dealing with earthquakes and fires. We did have a project listed in there for the Murrieta Temecula Creek, but that is actually an Army Corps of Engineers project. So having it in there does let them know that we are doing something, but it is actually not a city-funded project. This graph here depicts the process that we are going through. COVID kind of shortened the timeline for us. The typical update timeline is roughly about 18 months. Once the County of Riverside was able to get all of the information and stuff together and started getting out of COVID, they started the update process to this plan and has roughly given us about 6 months, 1/3 of the time to complete an 18-month process. But the team that we have built is in excess of 50 people, and we are having great success with obtaining the information we need, collaborating together, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to have a draft plan for you to review in person at your January meeting. On here, we have 5 different phases. The first phase is the prepare phase, where we go through and we have our kickoff meetings, we establish our planning team, and develop the outreach plan and approach. Then in the development phase, there are 3 different subsections where we look at our existing conditions and validate those. We conduct a risk assessment because over the last 5 years, while wildfire might have been number 2, maybe the way things have traveled over the last 5 years with recent fires and historical data, we're able to push that up to number 1, so we have to reprioritize and validate those hazards. Then we turn around and develop a mitigation strategy, which we have our goals and objectives for, the actions, how we plan to implement that, and then prioritize those actions as well. Once that all happens and the plan is drafted, it goes into the final phase where it's reviewed, adopted, and approved. The 4th phase is implementation and maintaining it. That's where we get that out to the city, let the constituents actually see the plan and what we plan on doing. We train to the plan for our staff. We exercise that plan so that we know how to react to the hazards as an incident management team, and then we continually review and update the plan on an annual basis. Our planning team is comprised of representatives from all of our city departments, and then our regional stakeholders. We have Cal OES represented, the County Emergency Management Department, our special districts such as our water and power, as well as our cable providers. We have our local tribes that are participating in the planning process as well. non-governmental organizations such as the Red Cross, our utilities, so all of our lifelines are represented. We have hospitals, our care facilities, both in-home and residential care, businesses, and also neighboring jurisdictions, because what happens here will ultimately affect other cities locally, as well as their planning process and their hazards can indirectly affect us as well, as was evident during the Fairview fire, where it didn't directly impact Temecula, but its impacts resulted in us having to establish 2 shelters to house those individuals that were evacuated. Our outreach effort has been going great. We've had, the plan is to do 2 public meetings, the project kickoff meeting, which is for you tonight, and then we'll have a draft review planning meeting, which you'll get another chance to see the plan and hear more about what we've done and what we've accomplished, and we'll conduct that one in January. We have done a significant amount of social media outreach, both on our website, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We've had the council, Supervisor Washington's office has done some publications. The Community Services Department, the city, and as well as the Chamber of Commerce have all been publishing this wide, which is why we've gotten the great support we have on our LHMP survey. We also have our community survey, as I mentioned before, on our city website, and it's easy to find by simply going to the city's plan, typing in LHMP in the search bar, and it will bring up that web page, and you'll be able to click on the link for the survey. Our next steps are to review the public comments that come in through the draft period, which ends in November. We're going to hold additional planning team meetings, and because of our condensed timeline, we are doing in-person meetings and virtual meetings on MS Teams to try and get the different teams together so that we're working collaboratively and almost simultaneously instead of just doing one single meeting a month. We're doing one in-person meeting a month, but then we're also having multiple virtuals during that time frame as well. Once all the data has been collected, we're going to then prepare and review the draft sections and then provide a status update to the public where we'll send out another email blast. We'll put it up on the website so that the city residents can actually view the current draft plan and what we are proposing on putting in front of the commission as well as the city council. Once that is all done and we've gotten those recommended changes, additions, concerns, and comments all answered, then we will bring that draft plan with its corrections back to the commission in January. And barring any questions from you, that concludes my presentation on the local hazard mitigation planning update.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really well put together, and there's no question you guys are doing a lot to get this done right, and it shows in that. I appreciate it. In your prioritization of your hazards that you mentioned, you talked about technical hazards being in there. Can you elaborate on what those are?
Our technical hazards are those that revolve around, cyber attacks or cyber terrorism. We're definitely including both of those in there because starting in January with the 2023 updates, not with the current plan, but in 2023, there's a new set of standards that are coming out, and those standards are going to require that we include different elements into the plan. One of those is an increased presence with cyber attacks and cyber technology, and the other one is having a climate position included within the local hazard mitigation plan. Because our current climate, while it may not be a direct issue or a direct hazard, it has second and third order effects on how the drought actually affects one of our primary hazards being wildfires and floods. So those effects are going to be coming in, and they're going to require that we actually have a climate action plan for our local jurisdiction.
All right, that makes sense. I was thinking that on the technical, but the other question I had, and it's more if you can explain, I was eavesdropping earlier with you talking to our CHP counterpart over here about the Great Shakeout Drill. As far as preparation goes, can you just explain what the city did for that and the efforts taken with that?
Absolutely. This week, for the Great Shakeout, I was actually in a training class last week, so we didn't hold it on the 20th. But this week, starting on Monday, we have given every one of our city facilities the opportunity to practice the shakeout drill on their own. Each facility is given 90 minutes where I dedicate as much time as they want to learning the proper evacuation process, whether it be for a fire, for an earthquake, a gas leak. The situation really doesn't matter. But for this one here, we were practicing the earthquake drill. So we would go to each facility. I meet with the supervisor, let them know what the plan of action is, and see if they have any current concerns. Then we go ahead and take care of those concerns up front. We meet with the staff, and then I let them go. Once they go, we go to the alarm room, and then we set off the fire alarm. The fire alarm is signifying the start of an earthquake. We let the alarm run for 1 minute. That's when they're supposed to drop, cover, and hold on. After that 1 minute, the alarm goes off, which signifies that shaking has stopped. Then they get up and they perform their tasks. Certain members within the building staff have specific roles, either as the emergency coordinator, a department or deputy department warden. We have sweepers, and we also have stairwell monitors if that facility has stairs. They systematically evacuate the building, conduct an accountability once they're all out front, and report that accountability, and then that concludes the drill for them. I also ensure that we have some additional staff members that are evaluating their process and ensuring that they're doing things safely and making sure that they're not forgetting things such as checking conference rooms, checking bathrooms and storage rooms, closing doors behind them so that if there is a fire, then they can slow that fire down. Today, we conducted our drill for the Civic Center, and we were able to effectively evacuate this building from the time the alarm went off till everybody was accounted for outside in 11 minutes. Except for the CHP guys in the conference center sitting there doing their training, but we were able to effectively evacuate this building. They've been doing it for several years, and I'm just glad that I have the opportunity to continue that process. The only thing that we have changed is we give every one of our facilities an opportunity to do it on their own. And if they want to do 3, 4, 5 different drills, we'll do as many as they want during the 90 minutes that they have allotted.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work you do for the city.
Thank you.
I'm glad you asked the cybersecurity question. That was going to be mine. I was thinking with the city of Murrieta and Valverde School District earlier this year and LAUSD. That's definitely been a prominent issue. My other question had to do with funding, and you covered most of my questions on that. You mentioned the pressure to obligate funding and wanting to have all the plans in place before we apply for that grant. Is there a limit to how long we can wait, and are we still able to apply for grants after a project is started, for example?
Yes, we can apply for multiple projects at multiple different times. You don't have to have one started and then completed before you can apply for another one. As long as you have the ability with the grant to exercise the steps and meet the intent of the grant and be completed, obligated, and have a reimbursement package put in, then they'll give you as much as you can take. But it's in our best interest to not take on too much at one time in case something does happen, because if you miss your timelines and you miss your goals for submission and you don't finish your grant on time, then you actually are out that funds and the city will have to eat that money.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that answers it. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation. I've been watching your work enthusiastically over the last year. This is my background. I'm the first civilian to ever be permitted to enter FEMA Academy and the first civilian to graduate. And my background was disaster preparedness and training first responders. In that, I wrote the disaster plan for the city of West Hollywood and served on the UCLA think tank, which worked with all of the surrounding counties doing mitigation just like this, all the way from a nuclear attack down to an out-of-control fire. So I really appreciate this work, and I look forward to reading your plan in January.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to developing this plan, and this is actually my first local hazard mitigation plan. My previous employment was with the federal government as a healthcare emergency manager before coming over here, and as you know, the federal government does not qualify for grant funding because they're giving themselves funds. It doesn't work that way, so I never had to do one of those. Emergency operations plans, one doesn't matter whether it's a hospital or a city, they're all the same concepts, the same beliefs. It's just in how you approach the vulnerabilities and the hazards and identifying the steps you're going to take to mitigate and lessen those impacts.
Yeah, well, I appreciate all that as well, and just everything you're doing with the EOC and all of the training staff's getting. It was an area that when I first came on the commission, I felt was one of our weaker points for emergency response, and I see it catching up quickly.
I will continue to do my best.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah,
you all.
I guess I'll finish up. So by day, I'm an engineer and mostly in the safety space, and launching rockets and putting satellites in orbit. And to see the same rigor for hazard identification and mitigation, control verification here at the city, I know that it works, and I know it prevents bad things from happening. So just to see that same rigor here just really gives me comfort that we're doing the right things, identifying the right things to work on. I guess my question for you would be, you know, we've been doing this since 2000. Is it a new 5 things every single time we do this, or are there some things that have been persistent on there from the beginning, like wildfire, that's just always something we always have to address and readdress, or is it new things like the cyber?
The cyber one is actually one of the newest ones. Looking back at the last 3 plans that cover the last 15 years, the top 5 hazards are predominantly the same. The only one that has changed is the addition, because of all of the influx of traffic, is including transportation hazards as one of our top 5. Because of the fact that we have a major corridor on I-15 and then a lot of traffic both on North and South 79, it opens up a lot of potential for hazardous materials incidents, not to mention just traffic congestion as well. Most recently, they had a 18-wheeler truck that actually jackknifed and went over one of the bridges and closed down the 15 freeway on both sides for several hours. That in and of itself being not necessarily a hazard, but it is a huge impact because our frontage roads do not have the capacity to handle the volume of traffic that was there. And that is what boosted it up from what I was able to read from in the top 20 up into the top 5, just based on the fact that we've had multiple events over several years.
Very good. All right. No further questions. We thank you again for spending your time here with us this evening and giving a very comprehensive report on the LHMP. Thank you.
My pleasure. I look forward to seeing you in January.
Yep. All right. So we will move on to agenda item number 3, the engineering and traffic survey update.
Good evening, Commissioners. Is this thing going up? There we go. This presentation is in regard to the 2022 Engineering and Traffic Survey Update. The CPC requires that local authorities review and affirm or adjust speed limits every 7 years based on an engineering and traffic survey. The CPC also allows us to extend engineering and traffic surveys up to 14 years if a registered engineer determines that no significant changes in a roadway and traffic conditions have occurred. You may recall a few meetings ago we did that with many segments. Nothing changed on them, so we extend them 14 years. But in this case, this one is on 33 segments in the city, 11 roads. And we performed new speed surveys because they were due at the 7-year mark, and they had some type of changes that warranted a new survey. And some of the things that changed that are significant that would make you do a new speed survey could be the roadway widths, striping changes, like adding bike lanes, or just generally traffic volumes have increased enough to where we think, hey, we should redo the survey. On this slide, we have here about 23 segments that we are going to reaffirm the speed limits. The speed survey agreed to what the existing speed limit is, and we are going to keep the speed limit the same. One thing to pay attention to is Pechanga Parkway here. Pechanga Concrete currently has two speed limits, 40 miles an hour and 45, and it's kind of a little bit weird. And so as you see, we go into the adjusted speed limits. We wanted to make Pechanga a little bit more, make it the same all the way through. It just didn't make sense on why we had certain areas different. And the speed survey was justified in proposing a new speed limit on Pechanga to be 40 miles an hour. So we reduced that by 5 miles an hour. So all these ones listed here, we have dropped by 5 miles an hour. One item I wanted to point out is Pujol Street. There's actually an error in the agenda report. We assumed that Pujol was 25, but it's actually posted at 30 south of First Street. So we looked at it again this week, and we are going to make it 25 miles an hour. The study still justifies it based on what's going on that street. You got a park, you got residents, you got actually a curve in the road, and it's cars parked on the side. So we feel it's good to keep it at 25 miles an hour. So with that, our recommendation is that the Traffic Commission recommend to the City Council to adopt an ordinance reaffirming and adjusting the speed limits identified in the summary of recommended speed limits. That concludes this presentation, and I can open up to any questions.
Thank you. Pechanga. Pechanga was originally built and set up as a 50-mile-per-hour street, and then there was a senior citizen that crossed by the hazmat liquor or whatever it is, and I believe was killed, unfortunately. It was lowered to 45. The area before that, between Temecula Parkway and Rainbow Canyon, that's the area that's 40 right now.
Correct.
And that's 40, if I recall, because we have the egress from the shopping center and gas station there.
It's pretty crowded.
So I'm just trying to figure out, people speed pretty heavily on Pechanga Parkway. Do we think this is going to be an easy transition, and what kind of notice are we going to put up for them to let them know?
It was actually surprising, the speed limits, where they came in. We wouldn't adjust them down to 40 if the data didn't suggest that. It actually is what people are doing for an 85th percentile. They're coming in around 42 to 44, and we thought you can lower it down to 40, and now we got it the same all the way through. So we feel that it'll work, and I was actually surprised.
Okay, and how will we do, is there a notification period, or?
We typically do an announcement, I believe, don't we, Pat?
Well, it goes on the council agenda
Yeah.
and is a discussion item, so there will be that noticing, I guess. And then maybe I can ask the Sheriff's Department representative as far as their enforcement practice on that when we make changes.
Normally, what we would do is we would continue enforcement as it is now and notify people that we're stopping. It's up to the individual what their speed is that they start writing people at, but normally it's around between 10 and 15 miles an hour over. We would just continue our enforcement as if it was still posted for 30 to 40 days, and then we would start adjusting our discretion, I guess, to take enforcement.
That works for me. Thank you.
All right, I guess a couple comments. We could always, if there was a perceived issue, could always deploy the trailer there to just have a flashing right under the new speed limit sign, right? So always an option. I will say that I noticed the Pechanga and Peppercorn are near the Great Oak High School. So there's one area we're lowering near a high school, and also the the Winchester Nicholas Road East, that's near the Chaparral High School. Yep. So personally, I'm glad to see these speed limits coming down near our schools. I guess my one question would be, are any of the lowerings attributable to our calming efforts that you're aware of with this group, or is there nothing on here where we've done calming?
Solana, we did calming, I think, a while back, didn't we?
Okay.
Yeah, and then the last group of changes did include Vail Ranch Red Hawk Loop, and that was as a result of the calming that was done on that street. as
Yeah.
well. So
It's nice to try to correlate, and so that you're correct, Solana. Hey, we did something there, and now we're seeing the desired result in the data, so that's really good.
Yep.
All right, with that, if there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second.
Sullivan moves.
All right. So we have a motion and a second, and we'll roll call vote.
Commissioner Ackerman,
Aye.
Carter is absent, Commissioner Maddox,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
and Sullivan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff, and we'll move on to our division reports. California Highway Patrol, good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here again. So for the last month, as far as services provided, we did 19 child safety seat installations, 6 traffic safety presentations, and 3 community outreach booths. So yeah, our public information officer had a meeting with the other public information officers here today at the city to make sure everyone's on the same page. As far as enforcement activity, we have 976 total enforcement contacts for the month. On September 29th, we had a special enforcement units on Interstate 15, and it was targeting kind of south of Temecula, but still obviously still affects us. We slow them down before they get here. And with that, we had 67 enforcement contacts on that day alone. So very good, and we're going to continue to do those where we do them jointly with other CHP areas. And then I know before we've done some with the sheriffs and with Murrieta Police Department and Menifee Police Departments due to manpower. We've had to cut back on those for all agencies, so hopefully we'll get those going again. As far as enforcement and fatal traffic collisions, I've noticed over the last 5 years that for whatever reason, I don't know what it is specifically, but October, November, December, our fatals seem to go up, and it's not weather related, it's just I don't know why. So we're going to give it a concerted effort over the next couple of months. We also have our radar trailer that has been down. We can't get it repaired, so we're trying to get it replaced. And with that, we'll start to put it on some of our other areas. So when we can't get there, we'll have the radar trailer there to try and slow people down. For DUI arrests, we have 36 DUI arrests. And one of the things I always look at that I've talked about before, we need to make some improvements here, is 17 of those arrests were out of DUI traffic collisions. We're trying to catch them before they crash, obviously. However, our DUI arrests were up. We were up 10 from last month, so I take it as good as our guys being out there trying to get the DUI drivers. Traffic collisions, we stay pretty stable. We're generally about 150 a month, and as you see for our total, we're at 135. So we had 77 non-injury, 54 injury, and 2 fatalities. As of the report, we had 23 fatalities for the year to date. And actually, as of today, we're at 26, so it is going up, and we are working on trying to get that under control. So our 2 fatalities were southbound I-15 at Olive, and then Ziders Road south of Keller. And that's all I have for this. Do I have any questions for anyone? Yes, sir.
How's your staffing doing? I know you've been struggling with that.
I've got another officer retiring at the end of the year. I do have two new officers coming in on February 1st. However, I'm down 6 this year, so now I'll only be down 4. But I'll take the 2, and I'm excited about it too because it takes about 15 years or so, or maybe a little bit longer of seniority to get into the Temecula CHP office. We've got 2 new kids who are coming in who they still have about 12 years on, but they're young relative to everyone else. So I'm excited to have the young blood in there to kind of stir things up a little bit.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
report. And next is the police chief's report. Good evening.
Good evening, Sergeant Pratt, representing the Southwest Station. September was kind of an awkward, kind of a strange month for us. The Fairview fire in particular affected September pretty well. We had to supplement patrol for the better part of 2 weeks. And so our numbers are somewhat down over our August totals, but we wrote 614 hazardous citations and 268 non-hazardous citations. Distracted driving was 210. The cell phone use, that seems to be continue growing. If you look at the month over month, that's pretty consistent with July. And it seems to be a problem that's not abating itself. And then DUI arrests were down. Our injury collisions were at 27. Our non-entry collisions were at 33, and our DUI arrests were at 24. That's in line with, except for the DUI arrest, because, as I said, our proactivity unfortunately was down a little bit that month, or in September. Are there any questions?
Seeing none, thank you for the report, and we will move forward. We'll receive and file the fire chief's report, and so we'll go to traffic engineer's report.
All right, I can give you an update on some projects that we're working on. First of all, we have our, I'll call it our last pavement rehab project that's going to be starting construction soon for this year, and that includes Winchester Road west of Jefferson, Solana Road east of Inez, Nicholas Road south of Winchester, and Inez Road north of County Center. So those 4 major roads will be getting a grind and repave, and that work is actually already underway and will be taking place over the next couple of months. Our slurry seal project in Paloma del Sol, Paseo del Sol is still moving forward and will be done fairly soon. And then our ARAM project, which is the loop around Paloma del Sol and all of the Meadowview side streets, is under construction now and will be moving forward the next couple of months also. Part of that slurry seal project includes Old Town Front Street south of First Street. So that will be slurry sealed and restriped, and we'll be doing the road diet, adding the bike lanes and reducing that to 1 lane in each direction on Old Town Front Street South. And that's the update on projects. During the month of November and December, there's 3 more city council meetings for the remainder of the year, and some significant items will be done at those 3 meetings. The next city council meeting is actually going to be the 3rd Tuesday of November, so it's November 15th rather than November 8th. And at the November 15th meeting, they'll have the QLMP on the agenda for approval, and the allocation of the what were called the ARPA funds, the federal funds that the city received, and how those funds are going to be allocated. So that'll be on the agenda, council agenda, for November 15th. The November 29th meeting, there'll be the commission appointments. So, and I believe Chairman Richardson and Commissioner Sullivan are, and I hope you're both applied for reappointment. Okay, very good. So you will be there on the 29th. And then December 13th will be the only council meeting in December, and that will be the council swearing in and reorganization taking place at that meeting. And then our Public Traffic Safety Commission meeting we will be combining the November, December, and the commission meeting in December will be the 14th, I believe. So, 14th? Yeah, December 14th. And that's a Wednesday rather than a Thursday also. So just if your clock is set to Thursday, this one will be on a Wednesday and not the 4th Wednesday. So that's actually the 2nd Wednesday. So, and that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much for that calendar. Make sure we're here on all the right evenings. All right, very good. Okay, commissioner reports, anyone?
I don't have a report. I just had a question. Did our fire representative, did they give any reason that they're not attending today?
No, we didn't get any indication they
Okay,
won't be here.
just checking. Thanks.
David, anything? All right. Not much to report from your commissioners, so we will adjourn to our next meeting, which is Thursday, November 24th. We're not meeting then, right? So we are to 12:14.
12:14.
12:14, okay. So disregard what's in the packet here. We will see you on 12:14 at 6 p.m.